Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Chris Finn, and I'm excited to start the first of a 4-episode series with my friend Mike Carroll, the mastermind behind Fit for Golf. Just in case you guys don't know who he is, he's a TPI Level 3 certified coach. He's got thousands, tens of thousands, I believe, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, of app subscribers that he's worked with. Also works with PGA Tour players. I'm just going to call him my fellow brother-in-arms in the golf, fitness, and performance space, and we are going to deep dive in terms of hopefully dropping a few knowledge bombs. Did I get that all right, Mike?
Yeah, sounds pretty good. Not sure if mastermind is accurate, but I'll take any compliments going. But
well, it's our show today, Mike, so we can call ourselves whatever we would like.
Yeah, but happy to talk through some training stuff, see if we can help some golfers, hopefully.
Cool. Yeah, well, so I'm excited, guys. If you guys didn't hear the full episode, we had a full guest spot with Mike on a number of episodes ago. I'll make sure we put the link to that full episode in there. Definitely go check that out. We dove deep into that. Afterwards, we decided to do this quick kind of 4-episode series. We're going to dive deep today into core strength. Power, is it real? Does it actually do anything when it comes to creating speed? Talking about how you can make sure you're doing what it is that you need to do to get better. And we'll have one of these each of the next 3 weeks for a 4-week series. And if you guys like them, let us know, and we'll do more, because Mike's one of the best in the biz, and so it's an honor to have him on here sitting side by side with me. So Mike, let's dive into it. Core strength, like, how do you? I'm just curious how you look at it. Like, when you're talking about increasing distance, is that the first place you go? Because that's where a lot of golfers go.
I think the first thing to kind of get straight is what you're talking about when you use the term core or core strength, because it doesn't really have a agreed upon definition. Like, if you ask someone what is the core, like, it's a kind of catch-all term that I think is used in a number of different ways depending on who's talking, basically. You could kind of make an argument for a lot of different muscle groups being part of the core. I think the sort of general public that don't have a huge training background, they would mainly be talking about the abs, I think. To keep it simple, I try and refer to the core as basically all around our midsection. And I generally use the term trunk instead of core, because I think it just makes it a little bit easier to hone in on what we're talking about, and sort of for the purpose of, I think, meeting people where they're at, I generally just think of, say, like a thick belt around your midsection. So, like, essentially from like just above your pelvis to below your chest. For sure, you could argue that, like, your quads, glutes, adductors, hamstrings are part of your core. I mainly think of, like, front, sides of abs and lower back, to keep it sort of simple for people.
Sure. Do you ever? Because I always thought of it as like a house, so exactly what you just said, all the way around. Like, if you put a weight lift belt on, like basically it does. Its job is to keep the spine stiff and stable through that area. I also thought, obviously, then there's the roof, diaphragm, there's the floor, so you have pelvic floor, you have kind of the bottom, those areas as well. Obviously tougher to train, not going to be in the mainstream, typically more in the rehab world that we're dealing with that sort of a thing. And then do you ever go to, because I know some people will go to, like, glutes and hip muscles, and what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you ever include that in core work? Or do you think that we just stick to kind of that belt around, and then, if we need it, diaphragmatic and pelvic floor type stuff, particularly like postpartum, if you're listening and you just had a child, or something along those lines?
If I'm talking trunk or core, I generally tend to talk about that, say, lifting belt around the midsection area, mainly because I think things like the hips and glutes tend to get much more stimulation from regular training. Like, if you're sprinting, jumping, squatting, lunging, deadlifting, like your glutes and hips are going to be getting, really, really, really good stimulation relative to how much stimulation, like, the abdominals or obliques are getting from those same exercises. So, like, if you're doing, pretty traditional and commonly programmed strength training, I think it's highly likely that your leg and hip muscles are getting much more stimulation than your trunk muscles are.
For sure. So, and how do you, I'm curious your thoughts on if you're back squatting or deadlifting, and let's say you have an athlete who's doing, 1.5 times body weight squat, they're doing, 175 to 2 times deadlift, right? Let's say they're pretty strong. Is that, I've heard some people tell you, like, oh, that's enough, quote unquote, core work, or do you supplement with that? What are your thoughts around that in terms of how much do you have to add in if there's somebody is moving that much load?
Yeah, so like everything, it's always goal dependent. But for golfers or someone who wants to, develop their trunk or core muscles a lot, they should definitely be adding exercises.
Cool. So let's start with that high level player, because we know that everyone listening right now all is deadlifting 2x body weight, because as all golfers do. But what if you have the high level? Then we'll go to the to the other side, the newbie, somebody who maybe hasn't been in the gym very much. But if we start at the high end, what sort of stuff do you tend to like to add in there for guys?
I like to have some rotational trunk work so that they're getting their pelvis and their torso twisting against load. Reason being is I think there's definitely value to increasing the muscle size of those muscles in our trunk, particularly our obliques, because anytime we're going to try and create a lot of force in a rotational movement, and we're going to be getting either a lot of rotation at the pelvis or at the torso, or we're going to be creating separation between them, which is what tends to happen in most rotational movements, we're going to be using those oblique muscles a lot. And if we can have those muscles be bigger and stronger, there's a better chance we're going to be able to produce more force and potentially be less likely to get injured.
100%. We've seen that big on the flywheel rotational work too. Particularly those guys. We did a 6-week study where we saw 1.5 miles gained rotationally with load eccentrically, as opposed to it was sub a mile an hour if you're just using kind of bands. And everything else was the same, still deadlifting, squatting, right? But all we changed up was the rotary work, adding that load to your point to try to add, nervous system firing that.
So I like
translated.
Like an example, I like a variation of a sort of cable rotation or a cable chop, where you don't have to get like too specific, because the main thing is we're trying to target those muscle fibers and provide them with enough of a stimulus to grow. So you can for sure do regular, like obviously if you have a flywheel, it's great. Most people don't. They have access to a cable machine in the gym. Mm-hmm. You can do pretty standard like cable pulley rotation exercises, which is like standing up, in an athletic posture, similar to golf posture, having the cable to your side and basically just rotating the cable from, say, the right-hand side of your body to the left-hand side of your body, and then switching over and doing the other side. One I also like is setting up with your back to the cable machine and having the cable at the high setting. So you're basically reaching back with your arms elevated a little bit, and now you have to pull the cable down and across you. Because I think when you're in that slightly more bent over position and you're pulling the cable more down against gravity and the cable stack is trying to pull you up, you get a little bit more abdominal work there. I feel it way more in my obliques. So I like that one. I also like adding in some loaded side bends. So I think that side bend mobility and strength is valuable for golfers. I think that kind of like side of the lower back area is something that people commonly struggle with. So I think getting strong in like the obliques, QL, is worth doing. And I'm also not against even just adding like some basic like weighted sit-ups or leg lifts or hanging leg raises, and then definitely getting the back of that area with things like deadlifts, RDLs, back extensions. So kind of the way that I think about it is if the same as most other, like I basically treat it like any other area or part of the body. So like if I'm trying to get my my quads and glutes strong, I know that I need to be doing exercises where I'm extending my knees hard, which would be like squatting and lunging. And if I want to get my glutes strong, I need to have exercises where my hips are extending hard. So things like RDLs, deadlifts, hip thrusts. And if we think of what the trunk can do, well, the main things that we're going to be using it to create force, we're going to have it twisting or rotating. We're going to have it, or what can it do? It's going to be bending side to side, and it's going to be flexing backwards and forwards. So if you think of what the trunk can do, it can twist, it can bend side to side, it can bend forwards and backwards, and obviously as well it can just brace and resist force. But I think that's covered pretty well with the exercises you talked about, like if you're trying to stabilize against really heavy weights in more compound movements. So that's basically how I train it. Twist side to side, bend side to side, bend forwards and backwards, and then you get used to bracing when you're doing regular standing weightlifting exercises.
For sure. So then let's pivot to the beginner, right? So let's say 50 to 60 years old, never really kind of, maybe they've dabbled in the gym in the past, but kind of a newbie, relatively speaking. And what would be, if you could pick two things, for them to work on their core? I'm sure you've got this as I'll get it you're playing with someone randomly and they're like, hey, what do you do? I'm in fitness. Oh, what are two good core exercises for me? How do you think about that in the context of obviously the advanced lifter we just talked about? You're going to look at all 6 of the different directional movements, right? With the newbie, would you just typically start with like a dead bug or something that's more stabilizing, as opposed to adding a lot of the movements, or knowing that this person probably is only going to maybe do 10 minutes, like they're not going to dedicate tons of time.
So for neither of the populations would I have it as a priority, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a nice to have. It's not a must have.
Yep.
Like if you told me that I could never do any of those movements again, I'd prefer to do them, but like I don't know how much of a difference it would make overall. To be honest, if it was the beginner golfer versus the more seasoned one, I don't think I'd change the exercises at all, to be honest. I'd still, if they wanted to do a couple of core exercises, I'd probably still tell them do some dumbbell side bends and do some cable pulley rotations or something like that. I don't think just because they're less experienced they need to get on their back and do dead bugs, or on their hands and knees and do bird dogs or something like that. Not that they couldn't if they were injured and doing any type of standing exercises or painful or something like that. That's fine. But
I think I agree with that. I would agree those are definitely like rehab level exercises. But if you have somebody functionally feeling good, why would you change the pattern stimulus that you're going to get? Yeah.
Exactly. It's even similar. I know, like, I can remember, people ask, if I post a video of me doing kind of like barbell lunges or something, like kind of doing heavy split squats, for example, like a heavy set of 5 for split squats or something. And people are asking like, I'm a beginner. What should I do? Like, still split squats, hopefully, just an assisted version, like hold on to a countertop or a railing or whatever you need to, and use your upper body for help, and then just gradually build up. And I kind of think of that the same way for pretty much all exercises, to be honest. Even like another one is like a pull-up. I can't do pull-ups. What do you suggest? Well, if you can in the gym, use the assisted pull-up machine, or if do like a lat pull down, or basically try and copy the same movements, just regress them
in a way that you can do it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same way I think about the trunk training stuff, to be honest.
So Ned, it sounds like, if to sum it up for everybody, on the little quickie here today, if you only have a limited amount of time, core exercises are not the top priority. Focus on more of the bigger movements that you're gonna, and then you're gonna get kind of carryover benefit into the core. But if you have the ability in quote unquote ideal world, then we would focus on all 6 movements and adding that in and training it just like any other area.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair way to summarize it for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's like definitely the way I would look at them too is, I think if you're doing a training session, and I don't know, let's say you've 45 minutes or an hour or 30 minutes or whatever it is, I think it's probably worth putting in a couple of, quick sets of one of the movements. Like that's the way I tend to do it. So if I'm lifting 3 days a week, I generally try and do one of those movements, even if it's for 2 sets at the end of each session. And like that's very different to say like adding another 2 sets of squats or another 2 sets of deadlifts. Like if I finish, if I'm doing heavy sets of squats and bench or deadlift and pull-ups or something, it's like you finish 3 or 4 challenging sets of those and I'm like, okay, like there's no way I'm doing another couple
one.
of sets of these. But like I'll rotate against the cable for like 2 sets of 8, no problem.
Yeah,
or I might
kill you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just and you're already warmed up. It doesn't take any warm-up time. Or I might do, like a couple of sets of hanging leg raises or, weighted sit-ups or something. It's like, okay, I can do those and it's nice to target those muscles. But I don't think they need as much like structure and, progressive overload as something that's much more systematic and kind of works well in that degree. Like I don't think of my side bend sets and reps the same way I think as my back squat or deadlift sets and reps and the progression I'm looking for over time.
Yeah, totally agree. Cool. All right, guys, that is the first of the 4 quick episodes we got coming. We got 3 more. Stay tuned. Each Friday, these are coming at you, and hopefully that was helpful for you guys, particularly around the core. And we'll look forward to catching you guys on the next episode.